What's going on YouTube? OCD for EDC here, and what I got for your face balls today is another brand new Twosun. It happens to be the Twosun TS 231. So really interesting knife. You're either going to love it or hate it, I think, the aesthetics of this. But we're going to get into it, and we'll talk about the things that I like, dislike, and what I think is great, and what is maybe not so great. So anyway, we'll start out here with a few size comparisons. First off, here it is with the Hogue Deca, and here it is with the Spyderco Para 3. So you can see it's quite a bit bigger than both of those knives, or quite a bit longer anyway. Here it is against the Spyderco Smock. So again, significantly longer than that knife. And then I also have got, here it is against the Kershaw Knockout. So again, quite a bit longer than the Knockout. But I think that ought to do it for size comparisons. You can see we've got a pretty small in the handle. It's a long knife, but pretty slim in this dimension here, in the vertical dimension. All right, so what are we looking at? We got an overall length here of 8.26 inches. We've got a handle length from this point right here to the end. It is 4.94, so just under 5 inches. However, your grip area is much smaller than that. It's right around 4 inches. So, yeah, just the way that this handle's designed, you get this kind of longer measurement. But anyway, handle thickness is just under a half of an inch at 0.49 inches. And you have a blade stock thickness of 145 thousandths. It is a full flat ground blade, and you have a behind the edge thickness of about 16 thousandths, which stays pretty consistent all the way across. You do have this recurve, which we're going to get into. And really quick here, let's throw out the weight. 3.662 ounces. All right. So you got a 3.3 inch blade measuring from that point. So the blade is actually, you've got a little over about 3.4 inches of cutting edge. But if you're measuring from down here, it's actually closer to 4-inch blade. But again, it's all about where you measure it from. So action on this knife, it's riding on ceramic bearings and has a ceramic detent ball. This is a full grade 5 titanium frame lock, and blade steel here is 14C28N, and you can see the designer mark there is a tiger head, and this is not Tiger King. So Joe Exotic did not design this knife. This knife was designed by Vincent Oliver. That's not a knife designer that I'm familiar with. So I'm not sure where Vincent Oliver is from or what else he has designed, but this one's interesting for sure. So anyway, you do have this, you've got a couple different methods of deployment here. Of course, you do have the flipper tab. The flipper tab it's not terribly large. I'm on the fence. Not horribly huge, but not really small either. It's just kind of a medium flipper tab, if you will. It does function well. You do have some meaningful jimping on the top side of the flipper tab there, and that's all you have for jimping on the knife. There's no jimping on the spine of the blade, but you do have really, really nice chamfered edges on the spine. And then you've got this opening hole here in the blade. Again, you can see really, really nice chamfered edges all the way around the opening hole. Twosun just does such a great job with softening all the edges on a knife. There should really only ever be one sharp edge, and it should be the cutting edge. Everything else should be very nicely contoured and rounded and chamfered. And Twosun just does the best job with that. They never miss. It's really stellar. So you can Spidey flick this knife with that opening hole. However, you can see the handle design does interject with that hole slightly. It still works and you can still do it. You can get your thumb, although it's a little bit difficult for me to get my thumb in there. I can get my middle finger in there to Spidey flick it. So, like I said, you can thumb deploy it, flipper tab, or middle finger flick. Those all work. As far as the construction goes here, you can see there you do have a lanyard attachment point back here. It's built into the back spacer, which I like that. I always think that's a nice design touch because it doesn't change anything with the side profile of the knife. It's there if someone wants it, but otherwise it's not something that hinders you if you don't want it. Nothing pisses me off more when companies do things like this and move the pocket clip from where it should have been, all because of a stupid lanyard hole. This is one of the biggest mistakes Spyderco ever made on this knife. They should have put the pocket clip up here and moved the lanyard hole over here somewhere or something, or just get away from it altogether. I mean, I know there's some people out there that do lanyards, but honestly, you can tie a lanyard around a barrel spacer, so whatever. But anyway, I just am not into the lanyard thing at all, so I don't really get it. However, with this knife here, you do have that option. So lanyard guys, you are covered there. But like I said, it's just not something that I'm concerned with. This is a full titanium frame lock. You do have a hardened steel insert with a ceramic detent ball. You can see here that the pocket clip is right over top of the lock bar relief cut, which is one of my pet peeves. I hate it when they do that because this edge gets caught up on your pocket. This one's not as bad as some others. And the reason for that is because this knife is heavily contoured in this dimension or in this direction. So if you look at the pocket clip, this is falling away from the surface where your pocket's riding. So that does help, but it's still not wonderful. So that's one thing that I dislike about the knife. The other thing that I dislike about the knife is the recurve. I'm not a big fan of recurves. This one's not horrible, but it's still, it's a thing that you're going to have to deal with when sharpening this knife. It's bad enough recurve that it's going to be an issue when you go to sharpen it. I don't know if I can show this off here. But yeah, you can see right there how much recurve we're talking about. It's not, obviously there's some that have more, but there's some recurve there, no doubt about it. So that's one thing that I wish that they would have done a little differently. The other thing is, for me, the handle's very small back here. Now, with that being said, it's extremely comfortable in the hand. It really is. So you have kind of this low spot right here where your thumb just fits perfectly. You have just this tiniest bit of thumb ramp here. There is no jimping on it, but honestly, I don't really feel like it needs it. It's really comfortable when I put it in the perfect grip. However, it's so small back here in the tail end that for me, and I've got large hands, or actually I have very large hands. I wear 2XL gloves, which are hard to find sometimes. But for me, it's so small that this can kind of move around in the back of my hand. Now, if I get it just where it's perfect, it's actually really good. You do have these milling lines in the titanium. Hopefully that comes out okay and you can see them. Those offer some really good traction, and it covers the entire knife. Every bit of it on the scales is milled like that. You can see the pocket clip, the milling lines go perpendicular, but it's good in the hand. For me, it's good in the hand when I get it in the exact location that I want it. The handful of times that I've been carrying this, just to pull it out, I find myself just readjusting on it a bunch. and it's just because it's so narrow back here for me. I think smaller hands, for my wife and my son both, they think this thing is super, super comfortable. Now, they don't necessarily care for the way it looks. That's a whole different deal, but they think it's very comfortable in hands. So I think for smaller hands, this is going to be a winner. Now, aesthetics, that's just a matter of opinion. Whether you like the look or not, that's a whole different situation altogether. Personally, it kind of looks a little goofy to me up in this area. But with that being said, it is so comfortable that, I'm kind of willing to overlook some of that other stuff. It's it's just a subjective thing, right? But to each their own. So I'm sure there's going to be some people that are going to love it. To me, this knife would look better without this kind of protrusion right here, and I don't really see any functional reason for that to be there. After having the thumb ramp, this could have just been cut and rounded off, and this follows the plunge grind here, which is kind of nice and it looks nice, and then this lines up with your flipper tab down here and kind of creates that forward, or not forward, but the first finger choil, which is fine. But yeah, I don't know. The aesthetics of this one it's not my favorite. We'll say that. I don't know. It looks kind of like a hammerhead shark or something. I don't know. It's different. That's for sure. But there's definitely a lot of contouring going on here and a lot of just really, really spectacular milling going on. I mean, when you really look at this thing close, man, the milling lines are just perfectly done. You don't see any tool chatter marks anywhere on this knife. That's one thing I've always been super impressed with Twosun. They just do such a great job machining these things. And for what you can purchase them for, it's crazy. Holy cow, people. There we go. So that part's really, really great. So negatives to me, not loving the aesthetics of it. I don't necessarily hate it. It's not the ugliest thing I've ever seen, but I'm not in love with it. I wish they would have done the lock bar relief cut internal. Would have made a big difference there for me. And it would have just looked nicer. And the recurve, those are kind of my three pet peeves. One of the other things, pocket clip, obviously not super deep carry. You're going to have, this sticking out of your pocket. That's another subjective thing. Some people hate that, some people don't. It's just, but, really with milled titanium clips, none of them are ever a true deep carry. So it's just kind of you got to take the good with the bad there. All right, let's get inside this. So one thing I didn't really talk about was the backspacer. On the backspacer, you can see it does sit proud of the scales ever so slightly, but it is rounded, which is really nice. And just everything about this knife is really comfortable, and it's just everything so well contoured and rounded. It just lends itself to be really comfortable in that way. But let's get this thing tore apart here. It's already wanting to disassemble itself. So there you go. Really don't have any weight relieving on this side. You can see that the blade stop pin is fixed to the blade, so it follows a track there. Of course, you've got the washers with the milled bearing groove in them, which is always a wonderful feature. And then let me wipe this off here. It's got some pocket lint and stuff in there. So you can see the detent track. You can see the detent ball ramp, which is wonderful. Love that Twosun does that. And then ceramic bearings, really well done. Twosun, just their quality's spectacular, especially for what these costs. I don't know that I talked about the cost on this one. This knife here, I've seen it go anywhere from like $50 or $60 all the way up to $80 or $90. It really just kind of depends on where you're getting it from and that sort of thing. But certainly this is more of a budget-ish titanium knife. And I would say, you know, if you really like the design, then it's definitely worth it. No question about it. However, if you are on the fence about the design, you know, yeah, it teach their own. You do have a captured pivot, I'm noticing here. So there you go. You got a D-shaped hole on the lock bar side. And that's one of the things, most companies seem to put the hardware the opposite direction, which really frustrates me. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, but knives should always be built from starting with the show side down like this and build up. And I'll tell you the reason for that. I see a lot of people, there's a few YouTubers out there, other guys that do disassemblies, and they mainly build them the other direction. But I'll tell you the reason why I like it this way. So one, generally your pocket clip's on your lock side because most knives are built right-handed. That's just the way it is. So here, when you set the show side scale down, you don't have to worry. Now this one's all contoured and rounded, so it does move a little bit. However, it's a lot worse when you're fighting the pocket clip laying down. The other reason I like to build the knife in this direction is because I don't have to fight the lock bar in the tension of the lock bar in this position right here. I only have to overcome that tension when I'm ready to do so. So here I can, you know, put my stop pins back in if that's what it had. I can do whatever I have to do, and the lock bar is not trying to lift my blade up. But so pretty straightforward on the construction. But so now at this point, this is when I'm ready to fight, or, you know, not fight, but deal with this lock bar tension. And I can place the knife, place the scale on there, and push it down just like that. And then I can hold it in place and start putting her back together. And true to form on Twosuns, see if I can get this to where you guys can see it a little better. All the hardware is T8, which is always a lovely thing. So can't go wrong with that. And they always just go together so well. And, you know, just the construction quality altogether is just stellar on Twosuns. They really, really are. If you guys have never experienced a Twosun knife, you really should. I know there's all sorts of differing opinions out there, and you'll hear people tell you, oh, they're so hard to get, and blah, 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 blah. And I hear all these different things. And then I ask those same people, well, how many Twosuns have you had? Well, they've never had one. So they don't actually know if they're hard to get or not. They just have heard that. So that's what they're saying. And, you know, all I'm saying is, you know, speak to what you know about, and then leave it to the people that do know to make those sorts of comments. Because right now, currently, you can get Twosun knives from White Mountain Knives. You can get them from Williams Cutlery out in California. They're stocking them. And then there's a couple more that I can't think of off the top of my head right at the moment because I don't ever buy from them. And then you can find them on Amazon. Most people, or a lot of people, are getting them on eBay. So, you know, they're certainly out there. I mean, I've literally had hundreds of Twosun knives pass through my hands. Some of them have been fantastic. Some of them I haven't liked so much. But one thing I can say is the build quality has always been good. I've never come across the Twosun yet that the build quality was subpar. Yeah, the machining's great. The fit and finish is always stellar, and actions are always good, and they're just getting better with time. I mean, as time goes on, they're just doing fantastic work. So anyway, really, really good stuff. This one here is the Twosun TS231. And that's about all I had for your face balls today. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. If you really like this knife and you like the way it looks, more power to you. I'm going to say you're going to love it. If you are kind of on the fence, but maybe you want to try it out, I would say go for it. It's cheap enough, not a big deal. And certainly it's a blank canvas to do some anno work, so that's cool. But this one's certainly not my favorite, but it's still a good quality knife. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. Thanks a lot. I hope everyone's out there staying healthy and safe. We will catch you next time.